Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Mr. DEBT, Joe Lorick from the Money Etiquette Group, and here's some cryptocurrency news you should listen to today. Today, there was a very important hearing in the House with the Subcommittee on Finance in reference to cryptocurrencies and ICOs. You had several representatives speak. You had people who are in the industry, including some people from Coinbase, a law professor, some people who represent law firms that represent a lot of cryptocurrency and ICO companies. And several other people were there to testify about cryptocurrency and the blockchain world. And also you had people who were there to just put out their opinion. But it was a very interesting meeting. What I will tell you ahead of time in reviewing this entire meeting is, number one, nothing definitive came out. There were no timelines set. There was no date set to say that the regulations are going to take place at this time. This is going to be a slow moving process because they're trying to gather information on an ever changing industry. So they don't have a lot of information about the industry. So there's not a lot to be said. But again, nothing is set in stone in terms of timeline, which means no immediate changes in the U.S. markets from a regulatory standpoint when it comes to cryptocurrencies, which can be good news, which means that we can have a little bit more stability in the market. However, here's some notes that I have from the meeting that definitely some were entertaining. Others were very informative, especially some of the insider information that we got about Coinbase and what they do to protect their assets and our assets that are on that platform. And of course, what goes into which coins or which cryptocurrencies are chosen to be on that platform. Very important information that came out. But let's start with something that was said by, and excuse me as I read my notes, the 30th Congressional District Representative Bradley J. Sherman. Okay, Bradley J. Sherman was had the strongest opposing voice when it came to cryptocurrency and ICOs. Okay, quote, he said that cryptocurrencies are a crock. He said that it helps to finance terrorists. It finances criminals. It hurts the power of the dollar. It's gambling more than anything because it has no social benefit whatsoever. He said cryptocurrencies have no social benefit whatsoever. Obviously, he doesn't know what's going on in not third world, but several countries that have been going through civil war, and when their currency lost value, how they actually use Bitcoin to be able to exchange that for dollars and still have money during a crisis mode. But there's so much more that's going on, but he doesn't know, obviously, or he does know, which we'll get to later. And he said it's popular for those who like to sit in their pajamas and say that they're going to be millionaires. I mean, I can't lie. There are some people that do that. You know, XVG Whale, maybe he saw that video when he was in his pajamas or something. I don't know. But nevertheless, this guy does have a small point there, but that doesn't represent the whole community. So, you know, you should be quiet. And, you know, I'm in my car. I'm not in my pajamas. Nah, I'm just playing. But anyway, after saying all that, we did a little digging about him and a little research because I wanted to know what was his motive to have such a strong stance against cryptocurrency when no one else in the room ever spoke so strongly against it. Then it came to find out that his campaign is heavily financed by an online payment processor company, Allied Wallet. Okay, so I understand now you hate Ripple and you hate Litecoin and you hate any potential cryptocurrency that makes it cheaper and faster or more inexpensive and faster to send money from one place to another, because the people that are financing your campaign obviously don't like competition. So I got you. You're their dog to be set out to bark and bite and do everything else, but we know it's kind of like full of, you know what. Anyway, just keep in mind that you probably will hear more from this House representative out of California in the 30th Congressional District. But just be aware that when anyone speaks that clearly in opposition to something and they don't obviously have real information to back it, it's usually other motives. And we see that that motive is certainly about working for those who finance his campaign. It's normal. But nevertheless, we had several people come and speak. And like I said, I'm just adjusting my screen so I can look at my notes because it's just happened today. But Mr. Limpris, which is the Coinbase chief risk officer, made some comments that definitely were worth taking note. He says that there is a need for responsible regulation, but not legal missteps. And you don't want to create too much regulations and too many rules where you can't operate. Nevertheless, there is a need for uniform regulation. However, he's saying that Coinbase already has, based on the laws in the state of New York and based on their cybersecurity systems, and also based on their choosing of certain coins to be on Coinbase, certain cryptocurrencies, and their know your customer actions, they take place. They know who's sending money, who's getting money, because they require you to put your information in there. They require you to have your checking account signed up with the platform. They're saying that basically we are already compliant and we're ready for this new wave that's coming in. And we feel that we're the leaders in cryptocurrency and blockchain, and certainly with wallets and exchanges. However, another point that they put out there that I think is very good information to know for us is that they said pretty much 99% of their information, which includes our financial information, which includes your records when it comes to what you do in Coinbase, your financial records, your holdings, they do put in cold storage, which is offline storage. So if they were hacked, which they say they have never been hacked, your information is held in cold storage, which is great, because it means that if the power went out, if something went bad with their servers, they do have it basically on hardware. They do have it in cold storage, so they're not as vulnerable to attack because they do have a backup system. And that's not required, but it's something that they've done and they believe everybody should do to make people feel more secure about using those platforms. Also, they said that in terms of their actual cash on hands, they do keep their cash on hand in banks. So certainly those banks are insured. So in terms of the profits and the monies and the values that they do have that already in banks, and they do guarantee what you have in your wallets in terms of their own insurances. So Coinbase is saying we're safe. But Coinbase also, or the chief regulations officer or risk officer, said that he also went into a little bit deeper about why only 4 coins or cryptocurrencies are currently on the platform, because they believe that they're not into currencies that are securities. They're into currencies which could be considered commodities, meaning they have real value because they have real world usage. You know, they're real currencies. And right now, Bitcoin meets that definition. Litecoin does. Certainly Bitcoin Cash, because it's a break off of Bitcoin, but it follows the same blockchain. You know, pretty much the ledger itself, it's split off, but it's talking about its history. And then also Ethereum. All of these cryptocurrencies are very proven in their stake and what they actually, how they're integrated into real world usage, which also lets us know that a lot of people who believe that their favorite altcoins that have no real world backing, that could be described more as a security, which means you have future promise, but in the current world, you have no, you don't have any real standing in the current economy. Those coins are not going to be added to Coinbase. So I'm not saying that that's good or bad news for Ripple, because Ripple does have real world usage. It's certainly more of a commodity than a security. However, a lot of your favorite altcoins that you believe will be the next coin added to Coinbase, it's not likely, because unless it's tied to real world usage, unless it meets certain standards that they have, it's not going to be added. And then they asked about those standards is that, you know, throughout all exchanges and all platforms and wallets, in the cryptocurrency world, they said no, but certainly they like to lead the industry, so they believe that it could be used as a standard. Dr. Brummer was another person. He's a research professor at Georgetown University. He spoke more about just making sure that with any ICOs that come out, there should be disclosures, and these disclosures should share the following. They should show the promoters of these coins and these companies. They should have their locations or their origins be disclosed. So it shouldn't be like a PO box. It should be physically where you operate and where your board operates and where they live, not where they live, but basically a solid address where they could be contacted, not just a PO box, because obviously you want to be able to trace things back to the origin when you invest in an ICO, and he believes that should be standard. Also, the ventures technology solution should be clearer. And basically what they're saying is that, okay, when you put out ICO, it's saying that your tech shouldn't be just tied to white paper. Your code should be out there in the public on GitHub. He's saying that you should have financial statements available for anyone that's going to invest in ICOs, and everything that you put out there should have a layman's term sheet, or addition put out there. You should put things out there, not just in coder language, but or in the finance language, but in layman's terms, so that an average investor, if they do choose to be a part of the ICO, they have all the information they need to make a definitive and good decision. Also, this was agreed upon from Mr. Peter Van Valkenburg. Okay, that's his name. He's the director and researcher, or director of research at Coin Center, which is a nonprofit organization. He went into defining what blockchain is, and also what's a security coin versus what's more like a commodity. He was just saying basically like Bitcoin and Ethereum. It's the same thing that Coinbase chief officer said. It's the same thing that was said by the other people, that you have two different kinds of cryptocurrency tokens out there, and it should be defined one versus the other, which ones are more securities versus which ones are commodities. And the point and the reason that was brought up, because they're saying that the SEC and the CFTC should put these standards out there and should put these definitions out there, so you can say what's a security versus what's a commodity. It doesn't mean you're over-regulating, but it does help you to identify what is what. Therefore, it can fit in with some of the laws that are out there already. But there also was a lot of advocacy for new laws being generated specifically for blockchain, but not over-regulation, because you have a world that doesn't quite fit in the financial world today in terms of some of the regulations that are out there. So they are asking for, everyone was asking for new regulations that would more uniformly fit blockchain. But with that said, also Mr. Rosenblum, which is he's a partner at a Palo Alto law firm, and he's an advisor to tech firms who basically put out ICOs. So he's very involved in putting out ICOs and helping people set up their infrastructure for ICOs. And he says that, he would like to have conversations with the SEC immediately to help modify and amend rules to better assist ICOs in coming out correctly, and having a more uniform way to do so that they are fully compliant with the SEC and with the CFTC. However, he also believes that some of the old rules don't apply perfectly, so that's why you need some new rules. And he says that it's too early to make definitive laws, though, because, we're only 9 months into the height of ICOs. So we need to know what's what. We need to define what's a security versus what's a commodity. And we need to take our time and actually pull data out of the market before we start making laws that have to be changed constantly, because this is such an emerging and new market. You don't need to have everything defined instantly. So that was some good points that came out. There were questions asked about security, and I believe everyone answered to them very safely, saying that you should have know your customer standards. You should have their name. You should have their email, physical address. You should be able to trace transactions back to people. And Coinbase already stores this information. So they said, of course, if regulators are ready to come in, they can provide this information, but everyone should have that stored and stored in cold storage, so that it's not just dependent on online usage or online exposure in case of a hack. So I think that was very good information. But overall, this was a very, I think, positive meeting, because ultimately the overwhelming, I would say, statements that were made in reference to cryptocurrency and ICOs is that you do need more regulation, but you don't want to over-regulate, because this is blockchain is not going to be stopped. It's going to go forward. So there's no talk of banning it and no talk of anything extreme, but adding some regulations and involving the SEC and the CFTC, or even the Federal Trade Commission in this world, and making sure that everyone communicates with everyone to create the best laws. And it looks like they want to have as many people as involved as possible to create these regulations and make sure that they fit. However, you do have your standalone haters, and you do have some that oppose cryptocurrency and the entire cryptocurrency market, and just pretty much calls it a scam, because a lot of those people's pockets are being aligned by old payment services companies that don't want to see newcomers come into the game and change things up. To say that this is a threat to the dollar, I think is immensely that's certainly exaggerated. So certainly it works within the financial system. I don't think it's a threat to the US dollar. But important meeting to pay attention to. We'll see when the next one is set up. As these hearings go by, we will certainly review all of them in case you don't have time to watch them. But know that right now, based on who was there as guests and based on many of the House representatives that spoke, most of them are reasonable in their questions, but you do have one or two outlandish ones, including our 30th congressional representative in California, because obviously he feels that it's all a crack, and everyone who does it just sits home in their sweatpants and say they're going to be millionaires without doing any real work. I would just say that's false. But again, that's what's out there. So, hey guys, I hope you got the information you needed out of that. If you have more questions, certainly submit them in the comment section. I'll let you know what I got from that meeting. But it's important to pay attention to these things if you're in the cryptocurrency world, or if you're an investor. This is a must know, because if you don't know what's going on, then you'll get caught and you'll lose money because you're not paying attention. So talk to you guys soon. We'll see where it goes in the future. Have a